welcome to the kitchen here at UF Office Okaloosa County. Today we have a treat. We're going to be cutting up some venison. It is whitetail deer season and we were successful on the hunt, and we have some nice really lean red meat to process today. So to get started, we're going to take a look at what you will need. First and foremost, always wash your hands, practice good hand sanitation. Make sure that everything is nice and clean. Make sure you get all the soap off of your boards, and make sure that you have it in a nice, well cleaned area. But to get started, we take your meat, and this has already been kind of cubed for us, but this is from what would be round on a beef, or the ham of the deer. It is extremely lean meat. As you can tell, there's not a lot of marbling, not a lot of fat content. But we're going to have to cut it down to where we can grind. Our goal here today is to make some nice breakfast sausage. So we want to make sure that it's nice, lean, and clean to grind. Obviously, we don't want these big chunks, so we're going to have to fabricate it or cut it down. Just like any other job or chore, you got to make sure you have the right tools. I have 3 different knives on the table. Which knife do you think I'm going to select? I'm going to select the one that's going to do the best job. This is too big. I would have to work extra hard with this little one. So we're going to pick this bone-in knife here. A little bit about knives. Knives cut because they have an angle. They create an edge. So they cut on 2 angles. That creates this nice edge. You want a nice sharp knife where you're not sawing. Knives can be very dangerous. If you're a youth, make sure you have adult permission in working with an adult. But basically, you have to create 2 angles. You want to hold the knife firmly in the handle, and this nice knife here has a tang. That's the blade that runs all the way in the handle, making it extra sturdy. So you don't want a knife that's going to have to be sawed. This is not a saw, so we don't saw. And really, we want to clear up all this external membrane. Stuff like that clogs up the grinder. So make sure that we get some of that off. You can kind of see, butchers call that silver skin some. As you can see, this knife is nice and sharp. I can just push. Okay. And when I make a cut, I want to create those 2 angles. So I want to go here, create an angle forward and then back. And it creates a nice cut. Meat have grain. As you can see, the grain's running from left to right. If you want tender cuts, it really doesn't matter for this because we're grinding, but if we were cutting steaks, we'd want to cut across the grain like that. So basically your goal is to make sure that we get all that silver skin and all that could possibly clog up our grinder. So let's take that, clean it up. That is a nice chunk. And we're just going to further fabricate it down. There's some fat. You can leave fat on it, but if it's going to be stringy, we will just take that right off. I like to keep it long where it will go down into the grinder where I can push it and get a good cycle. All right, so we pulled out a piece of the ham. I call it the ham. It's the round on the cow. It's the end of the deer. But you could tell this piece touched the bone because we have what us butchers call mole meat, but it's just membrane and silver skin that runs along the bone. That has to come off. That will clog up our grinder like glue. So what I like to do is I like to make it in manageable pieces. Again, 1 angle, 2 angle. And as you can see, this is very grainy and you have a lot of membrane. That membrane is going to have to come out. So let's clean that up. Anywhere that looks silvery, we're going to take off, if that's a word, but looks like silver. There's a big piece there. So as you can tell, that looks a lot different than that. So this piece is nice and lean, and it's ready for the grinder. And we'll continue going on and just cleaning that up. Here's a good piece of that silver. You can really see it. That's, if you want to be real fancy, you can call that sinew. Native Americans used to use parts of these ligaments and things to make bowstrings, but very, very flexible, very hard to grind. Don't want.
Hi everybody, I'm Jill Brslowski, the Family and Consumer Science Agent for Okaloosa and Walton counties. And today we're going to make some fresh venison breakfast sausage. Now to start out, I've already washed my hands and put gloves on. I've also pulled back my long hair and have washed all of my machinery and surfaces so that we prevent foodborne illness. And today I'm going to show you further processing for fresh venison. We're going to actually be making breakfast sausage, and for that we've got our venison, we've got some ground pork, we've got sausage seasoning, and of course our sausage grinder. Ronnie's already prepared and cut up our venison by removing all of the connective tissue. We're going to go over here to our grinder, which is already set up. We've got a coarse blade in here, and we're going to run this venison through one time. Okay, I'm going to start this up here. And by putting that venison in this hopper, and we're going to go ahead and hit the on button. You'll use this tool to push the meat through the grinder so that you're not putting your hand in there. The next thing that we're going to do is take our ground venison, our coarsely ground venison, and put it into a mixing bowl along with our ground pork. Now, some people like to mix this in a 1-to-1 ratio. Some people like to do it in a 2-to-1 ratio. If you do a 2-to-1 ratio, you'll have a little bit leaner sausage. I'm going to go ahead and mix these together with my hands. So here I have the needed product. Next, I'm going to add our sausage seasoning, which I have pre-measured. And again, I'm going to knead that with my hands until it's thoroughly mixed. Now, if you didn't want to purchase a sausage mix like that, a sausage seasoning mix, then you could simply make your own at home. And that's a great activity for the kids because you can just season these to taste. And they can kind of play with the seasonings and learn how to measure. So things like thyme, sage, even crushed red pepper are great for these kinds of sausage mixes. Okay. So here we have our mixture of seasoning and ground pork and ground venison. We're going to put it through the grinder one more time using a much finer blade. So here I'm just going to take my mixture of meat, and we're gonna send it on through. So here we've got our ground sausage, which is ready to either prepare or preserve in the freezer.
Alright, welcome back. We showed you how to make homemade sausage. Now we're going to switch gears and show you how to make another fun treat in the kitchen. We're going to teach you how to cut up jerky. We still have some of this ham or the round off of the venison, off of the white-tailed deer that we were able to get. So with jerky, the thing is it has to be super clean. You don't want any fat. Fat does not dehydrate well. That's how you get jerky, is you take meat and you dehydrate it. You take all the moisture out of it, leaving all the nutritions and all the tasteful things behind. So it has to be super clean, and it's very important how you prep it. So again, make sure you have the correct tool for the job, a really nice sharp knife. If you're a kid, make sure you have adult supervision when you're doing this. But basically, we're going to cut everything off that doesn't look nice and red. So all this fat and silver, we're going to take that right off. Even this stuff that's very thin, and clean it right up. All right, since we got it real clean, that looks pretty good. You can see that I've left nothing but red and meat. I like to make it flat as possible, and I want to cut with the grain on this. Jerky's supposed to be kind of chewy, that's what makes it good. So we're going to cut with the grain. Again, you can see how that meat's running. So it's very important when you slice this to be consistent. You don't want one side thicker than the other. You want it the same thickness all the way across, because you want to dehydrate at the same time. No one likes juicy jerky. You want it to bend but not break. So make sure that it is as thick or as thin all the way across. So let's see if I'm able to do that. I'm going to take my knife, make a cut, and go straight down. As you can see, that lays out nice. That is about the same thickness all the way across. That will dehydrate in a little bite of jerky. So we will just continue that all the way through. A little trick when you get to the end to keep from cutting yourself, you can use what you've already cut as a guide. So you have nice, clean, same size jerky. You don't want it much thicker than that. The thicker it is, the harder it's going to be to dehydrate. All right, we've sliced it up real thin. We've trimmed it. It's super clean, super lean. So what we've done here, we put it in a nice bag, and we use dry marinade. You want to marinate it whatever flavor you want, peppered or hickory smoke, whatever you want. You can just add in your mixture of marinade. This is a dry marinade, so it's seasoning. It looks like salt, pepper. So we sprinkled that on there, reading the directions. It has something called cure, which makes it safer to eat a little bit. So we put the cure in the seasoning, and we followed the instructions. It's real easy. You can find jerky seasoning in your big box stores. Mix it up really well. And you want it nice and dry. Get it as dry as you can when you mix it. So this is really dry. We patted it dry before our marinade. We've mixed it up. So to marinate, it's a time process. Let the seasoning and the flavors mix into the meat. But to kind of speed up this process, to kick it up, we're going to vacuum seal it. So we're going to put this meat in And this system pulls all the air out of it. It vacuums the air out and seals it. And it's a great way to store your meat. Even if you're not making jerky, if you need to store your meat in the freezer to protect from freezer burn and the wholesome of the product, this is a great way to do so. You can store it at longer times doing your vacuum seal. So let's take a look at how that's done. We have our vacuum sealed bags. These bags are sold for these machines that do that. It's sealed on one side by heat, and we are just going to transfer the meat product. I try to do it without getting any moisture where the heat's going to be at, so we get a nice clean seal. I can really smell this seasoning. Alright, so now we have it. I want to pack it down out of the way so I can get a nice seal. So we'll take this sealer, we're going to close this latch here, and then does it release on its own?
The lights go on.
Alright, the lights are off, so it's sealed, and it's, as you can see, it's vacuumed all the air out, made a nice clean seal. Always like to check that, make sure it's not going to leak. And it's ready to set in the refrigerator. We'll set in the refrigerator for several hours as long as we can stand it. And then next we'll show you how to put it in the dehydrator, and then hopefully show you the finished product soon.